Hello there, and welcome into another episode of the Fasting Guy podcast. I am the Fasting Guy. Most people just call me Brett. I'm a guy that spends at least 25 hours a week doing research on weight loss and metabolic health. I look at all the latest papers, literature, the latest studies. I've also lived a life of obesity, weight loss failure, and weight loss success. I've lost 60 pounds and failed due to an injury. I lost 80 pounds and failed due to a hospital stay. I lost 125 pounds and then failed due to debilitating depression and grief. And now I'm losing weight more effectively than I ever did before. My goal is to give you research, my personal experience, and the motivation you need to achieve your health and weight loss goals. So in today's podcast, we're going to learn what the protein leverage hypothesis is. The protein leverage hypothesis. And it sounds like some fancy words. It's really not all that fancy. From Wikipedia, the protein leverage hypothesis states that human beings will prioritize the consumption of protein in their food over other dietary components and will eat until protein needs have been met regardless of how much energy content they consume, thus leading of overconsumption of foodstuffs when the protein content is low. This is a hypothesis that was put out as a potential explanation of the obesity epidemic. Empirical tests have provided evidence to confirm this hypothesis. There's several different of them. I'm not going to go too deep into that. One study suggested that this could be a link between the ultra-processed foods that we see on grocery store shelves today and how obesity has just taken over the developed world. This isn't anything new. This has been bouncing around since way back in 1995. An Australian researcher, Susanna Holt, developed something called the satiety value of food, and it measured how much a given food is likely to satisfy your hunger. And high protein foods were at the very top of the list. So let's talk about that's all nice and all, that's all fancy and all, but what does that mean to me as a person who's trying to lose weight? And what should I be doing to implement this in my life? What is it that I need to do with this protein leverage hypothesis to help me lose weight, stay full, not get hungry, decrease my fat percentage, and increase my muscle percentage, and change my body composition, and keep it off lifelong? And that should always be the ultimate goal. And I'm very hesitant when I always ask people who want my help, in a personal one-on-one setting. I always ask them what their goal is, and typically, if their goal is to fit in this certain size dress by certain date, I'm very hesitant to help those people. I not that they don't need help, but anybody can lose weight in 2 months. If you have a wedding coming up 2 months from now and you want to lose 15 pounds to look good in your wedding dress, anybody can do that. Anybody can do that. Just cut your food way back, suffer a little bit, be hungry, and lose the weight. You're going to gain it all back, and you'll probably gain more, but you can do that. Anybody can do that. You don't need my help for that. To change your life so that you eat in a way that you will always either be decreasing in weight until you reach a healthy weight and then maintain that weight until you pass on into the hereafter, that's the challenge. That's what we should all be striving for. And so I would encourage you, if your motivation has been fit into a certain size bikini by summer, fit into a certain size wedding dress by a certain date, or be so many pounds by the last day of the year, and if that's your overarching, I would encourage you to change your goal. And your goal should become to eat in a way that is conducive to lifelong sustained weight loss until you hit your preferred weight, healthy weight, and then be able to maintain that weight until you exit the planet. That should be your goal. And when you change that as your goal, it then becomes about what you eat every day and how you eat every day rather than how many pounds you've lost this week. Now, don't get me wrong. I still get excited about pounds lost this week, pounds lost this month. Matter of fact, I just released a June update that detailed in great detail what my month of June was like, a really high goal I had. And I don't regret that, but that was not my overall goal. My overall goal, and I even said it in the podcast leading up to the challenge and in my recap podcast about the challenge, I made it very clear that I set a huge goal, a 20-pound weight loss goal. But if I hit it or if I didn't hit it, it wouldn't matter to me. All that would matter to me was that I ate right every day, put the right kinds of food in my mouth every day, and practiced an intermittent fasting schedule or in and out of an extended fasting schedule that allowed my body to heal, burn carbs and be in a fat burning state, and do things that, these are things I can sustain and do for life. So I want to just take a quick look at a cereal that some people may eat. Now, I used to love eating Frosted Flakes for breakfast, and I would have Frosted Flakes and milk. And the one thing that that shocked me later on in life when I started trying to lose weight and stuff, and started measuring out my food, I really came to realize that all those years I had been eating Frosted Flakes, I'd been eating like 5 times the serving size. The standard serving size for Frosted Flakes is 3/4 of a cup. It's 30 grams. It's 1 ounce. It's just slightly more than 1 ounce. If you pour 30 grams, get you a scale and pour 30 grams of Frosted Flakes into a bowl, you're going to be so disappointed. It's so disappointed. It's like the serving size for a 5-year-old. Definitely not an adult, not a teenager. Nevertheless, I used to eat that for breakfast, but it'd be a huge bowl, probably be 5 servings of it with a cup or a cup and a half of milk. And that would be it. But now when you look at their recommendations, like when you look at their photos, the food company's photos of how you incorporate this into a healthy breakfast, they'll show the little bowl of Frosted Flakes with milk. They'll typically show some toast with a little bit of jelly or jam on it and a glass of orange juice. And they say that's a healthy breakfast. So using their best case scenario that they post pictures of everywhere as being what a healthy breakfast should look like, I took those items and I thought we would look at the calories, of course. We'll look at the carbohydrates, of course, but then we're going to look at the protein and see how much protein you're getting and just see if that'll give us some indication as to if this protein leverage hypothesis holds any water. So we'll start out, and I'm not using the serving size of Frosted Flakes I would have eaten and you probably eat. I'm going to use what's on the box, but just know that no human eats this. They eat at least twice to 5 times this amount. But you're going to get 110 calories in that little 1 ounce serving. 110 calories, 27 grams of carbs. That's how much sugar is in there. That's a ton of processed carbohydrate. Guess how much protein is in there? 1 gram. 1 gram of protein. That's it. Moving on to the milk. I thought we'd look at some 2% milk instead of the whole fat milk or whatever. In a cup of that, you're going to get 8 grams of protein. So that doesn't sound too bad. 8 grams of protein in milk. Your toast, if you have a couple slices of some whole wheat toast, which they say is the healthiest, you're going to get about 4 grams of protein, a little less maybe, 3.5, 4 grams of protein. Then if you have some grape jelly on there, and this isn't much by the way, it's like a tablespoon spread on there, you get zero protein. 140 calories though, and 13 grams of carbohydrates, the majority of which is just pure sugar. And then we'll top it off with a cup of delicious, healthy, wholesome orange juice, right? Got to get that orange juice in there. Well, that's a whopping 1.7 grams of protein. I'm going to round it up to 2, okay? I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say 2. So let's add it up. We're going to go backwards. 2 grams plus 0 is 2. Was it 2 grams? Yeah, 1.7. We'll round it up to 2. 2 plus 0 is 2. 2 plus 3 is 5. We were going to round that up, so we'll call that 6. 6 and 8 is 14 when you add in the milk, and then add 1 in for the protein, and that's 15. That's 15 grams of carbohydrates. Now, if you had 3 meals a day with that much carbohydrates, you'd be getting 45 grams of protein, which is squadoosh. It's nothing. 45 grams of protein is about what you should be getting in 1 meal. As a matter of fact, when I start working with people, my first goal is to get them to take carbs out, and I start encouraging them to up the protein, but we don't talk numbers. But once they get to a point that they're starting to eat meals that kind of look like meals you should be eating, I really say, okay, now let's hone in on the protein. You need to start counting it. We need to start hitting protein goals. And I do this within a couple of weeks. It's not like I wait months to do it, but you got to give people time to transition without feeling overwhelmed. And I find that suggesting foods to people, getting them to change the way they eat, and on top of all that, have them trying to hit protein targets for every meal and count everything up and add it up, it's just too stressful. So we first try to get a little bit of changes. We suggest some foods, some meals, eliminate some foods, get people doing that for a week or two, and then we start saying, hey, look, you got to hit a protein target. And the protein target that I tell them to hit is 40 grams per meal. It's been shown that between 30 to 50 grams of protein, somewhere in that range, is what you need to hit to trigger muscle protein synthesis. This is the level to where your muscles become sensitive to the protein. They start using the protein to build and grow, not just muscles, but other things, tendons and cartilage and skin and all kinds of things. Your body needs protein as a building block. These amino acids are building blocks. They are literally the brick and mortar that the house that you walk around in is constructed out of. And so you have to eat a certain level of that to trigger protein synthesis, to get all the benefits from that, and to get enough of it to reach a satiety level. So let's compare these two. We're looking at this breakfast, which has been touted as healthy forever, which is just ridiculous. Has 15 grams of carbs. It has protein. It has 1/3 of the amount of protein that you should be getting in that meal. Now, what do you think that means? What does that mean in relationship to the topic of our podcast today, which is the protein leverage hypothesis? Well, if the protein leverage hypothesis is true, and there's a lot of evidence that support it as a valid hypothesis, your body would want you to eat 3 times that much for breakfast, so you could hit that 45 grams of protein, because you're only getting 15. And so what this hypothesis says is that your body's just going to keep urging you to eat and eat and eat until you get that 30 to 50 grams of protein in. We'll call it around 40. So about 3 times that breakfast. Now, what does that mean? So let's go back now, and we're going to look at 3 times the numbers. Okay, we have to eat 3 times of all of this stuff, and I'm going to tell you how many processed carbohydrates that would be to get to that 45 gram of protein level that we need to be at for the body to feel happy and function right and start the proper building blocks of all this healthy muscle and sinew and bone and things that we need. How much of the cereal would you have to eat for that box to be ticked off for your body to go, okay, I'm good with things now? Well, you'd have to eat 3 times the amount. So I'm going to multiply the processed carbohydrates in all of these foods times 3, because and see just how much sugar you'd have to be eating to hit that protein level. So for the Frosted Flakes, it's 27 times 3. And you're going to have to forgive me, because I should have worked this out in advance, but I didn't. All right, that's 81. The milk, 12 times 3 is 36. So we're going to add 36. Was a lot of carbohydrates and sugar. The bread, of course, instead of eating 2 slices, you'd have to eat 6. That's crazy. 13, that would be 39. So we're going to add 39 to it. Oh my God, this is so much processed carbohydrate. We'd have to eat 3 times the jelly, although there's no protein in the jelly, so eating 3 times the amount wouldn't help you towards protein, but you would eat 3 times the amount because you'd want it on your bread. Anyway, it's 11 times 3, that's 33, so we're going to add 33 to our running total. And finally, we get to the orange juice, which is a lovely 26. Wow, that's 60. 63 is 18, 78. That's 78. Holy schmoly. 260 7 grams of carbs you'd have to eat to hit your protein amount. So what the protein leverage hypothesis says is for your body to feel happy, for it to feel like it got the protein it needs to trigger protein synthesis in that one meal of food, you'd have to eat 267 grams of carbohydrates. Nearly all of that processed carbohydrates. The orange juice is obviously processed because you've taken all the fiber and anything decent out of it, and you're just left with the pure sugar juice is all it is. That's all orange juice is. It's just sugar juice with a little bit of flavoring in it. The bread, all that's all highly processed. Obviously, the cornflakes are processed. I guess the only thing that you could make a case for that isn't highly processed would be the milk, but it's still just pure sugar. If we were to figure out what's the equivalent of how many teaspoons of sugar that's converted to in the body, we would divide it by 4. 66 teaspoons of sugar for breakfast just to get to a level of protein that would make your body happy. Okay? That's crazy. That is why we're fat. I'm a firm believer, and trust me, I just to reiterate briefly, my 7-year journey of weight loss, which started out with some kind of a pill, then it moved to a raw vegan kind of thing, and then I moved to a cooked vegan kind of thing, and then I moved to keto, which was a moderate protein kind of thing. Then I started incorporating fasting, and now I have arrived at a low carb, high protein combined with intermittent fasting lifestyle, which I'm 100% convinced is the way to live the rest of my life. I've not only have I read the literature, not only have I listened to just super knowledgeable and crazy, intelligent people on this subject, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, Dr. Ted Naiman, boy, who else would fit in here? There's a ton of them. Oh well, let me say it. There's not a ton of them, but there's 2 or 3 that are really out there. The other one is right on the tip of my tongue, and I can't think of the name right off the bat. So I apologize for that. But definitely go follow Dr. Ted Naiman on Instagram. Go follow Dr. Gabrielle Lyon on Instagram. It's killing me that I can't think of the third name to recommend you. But if you get started with those 2, you'll be off to a good start. I mean, I think the evidence is overwhelming. I think when you see the results that these doctors get with their patients, it's overwhelming. And then I can tell you from eating this way to the best of my ability for the last while now, it's just better. So what would I recommend to you? Well, first you need to track food. You need to track your food in an app like MyFitnessPal or whatever you choose to use. And you need to go low carb, and that means you need to really be eating 100 or less carbs a day. So that's right there is going to limit, what you eat. But if you'll make it greens and salad and broccoli and cauliflower and asparagus and things like that, then the carbs you eat will be mostly good carbs. And you can splurge a little bit and have, every now and then something that's a different kind of a carb, but mostly eat carbs that are food. And then target protein levels, and don't ever eat a meal that doesn't have at least 40 grams of protein in it. And see how full you feel and how satisfied you feel and how the snacking craving thing goes away. It's just remarkable. Like, you'll just feel so much stronger. Like, the change you'll feel, and it'll happen pretty quickly. Within just a few days, you'll just feel stronger. You'll feel more centered. All I can do is tell you to try it. And it can be tough at first. Trying to figure out how to eat that much protein can be tough. I can tell you for weight loss, I try to make half or more of that be lean chicken. So we're talking grilled, broiled, baked, chicken breast mostly. But then I do beef as well, mainly in the form of ground beef. And I'll do it as hamburger patties, or I'll make like a meatloaf. Not a meatloaf that's got a lot of bread in it. I notice most of these meatloaf recipes have tons of bread in them, but you definitely don't want to do that. And And then steak, obviously, stick with the leaner cuts of steak most of the time, and then splurge, once or twice a week and have you a real fatty ribeye or something. But then the rest of the time when you eat steak, eat the steak that isn't super fatty. And you can look right at the label, even the food that they've cut up for you and put in those, wrapped packages. I find that all of them now, they have that nutrition right on there. You can see if it's a lot of fat or not. And stick for the less fatty versions. You want to keep the fat to a moderate level. And you ask what a moderate level is. Well, it's tough to determine exactly a range, but especially for men, I would say you definitely want to be getting around 80 grams of fat a day, 70 to 80, because that keeps your hormones and stuff fueled up and ready to go. And for women, a fair amount of fat as well, 50 to 70 grams maybe. 50, 60, 70 grams. Men, 70, 80, 85 grams. But keep those carbs low, 100 or less for sure. And then keep that protein up. You want 100 grams of protein. Now, the last thing is, if this is new to you, 100 grams of protein for lunch doesn't mean 100 grams of hamburger meat or 100 grams of chicken. Chicken isn't all protein. It's high in protein, but it's not 100% protein. So when you weigh the chicken out, your 100 grams of chicken, when you weigh it out, it's not going to be 100 grams of protein. It's going to be less grams of protein. So you have to weigh things and punch it into MyFitnessPal to know what the final amount of protein is. I promise you, if you'll start implementing this and you'll start targeting high protein levels, you're going to find some amazing things happen. You're going to feel stronger. Your body's going to start building these, especially muscle. You'll start recompositioning in ways. The less you've worked out, the more you'll feel it too. The more lazy or sit on the couch kind of person you are, the more you're going to notice the difference. And then you're just going to feel satisfied and satiated, and you're going to see your body start changing. So I encourage you to try it. I appreciate you listening. Follow us on social media, Fasting Guy Podcast. That's how you find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I would love it if you would go leave us a review on Apple Podcast. I know some of you have, and it means the world to me. But go to Apple Podcast and search for the podcast. Some of you already get us that way, so it's no problem for you to just go to the podcast page and just leave us a review, man. 5-star reviews with a few words about the job we're doing means the world to me. It means more than you could possibly know. I thank you so much. And if you'd like to support what we do, if you find my motivation, my information, my research, and my own personal stories are helpful, then by all means, consider being a patron. You'll get a lot of perks for being a patron and supporting what we do. And let me remind you that I'm not a doctor. I don't ever give anybody medical advice or weight loss advice specific to them. I just run through the research and give you my own personal experiences and express how it may be beneficial to you, but you should always consult with your doctor. Have a great one. We'll talk to you next time.